Okay, let's call the meeting to order. The clock on the wall says 8:04, so my cell phone says 7:07. Call the meeting to order at 7:07. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Eric?
Nope.
Scott? There are none. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 19 regular police commission meeting?
Motion.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, move to approve the agenda as submitted as well.
Okay, I apologize, thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Although I think that's submitted. So let's start with the monthly report. Deputy Chief Harden. Oh, excuse me.
I'm going to have Lieutenant Carmack,
Well,
since
then
he'll be taking this role soon.
Let's take just a second here to acknowledge why Sergeant Carmack is at the podium and not Harden. And that's because this is Deputy Chief Harden's last meeting. And he retires effective December 3rd. So we won't have him for any more of our meetings, and he won't be at the next township board meeting.
Correct.
To express for the commission that we appreciate all your years of service and your leadership and your assistance in getting through the last couple of years here. Anyone else want to say anything?
No. Thanks for spending your career with us, and best wishes with what's coming next.
Thank you for the
Some
opportunity.
some terms were probably easier, but certainly the last couple of years were probably incredibly difficult, and you held it together with COVID and everything else going on. So thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for always the most respectful presentation on behalf of the department. I think you've done a great job of the last, since you've been in as deputy chief and stepping in as chief. And I don't think the department could have gotten through a lot of this without you. So thank you very much.
Fine, thank you, sir.
As I said, coming up here, how many years ago was it? 26?
25 in December.
25. I'm so old, I was around when we hired Brent, and I played a big part in making that happen. Brent and I had some conversations back then, and I'm really glad, as I said to him just before the meeting, I'm really glad we made that happen 25 years ago. So,
Thank you.
So, moving right along. What do you got for us, Doug? That's good.
That being said, in addition to your briefing, one is noteworthy in this, that for 60 years, 15 vehicles in the fleet, we have 16.6, which is a Ford Explorer. 2020, which is 733 miles, and 16.8 is a couple typos here, but it's a Ford Explorer 2020, and those are the two new cars, the most recent cars we have in the fleet.
Just real quick, no questions, but the last time we were here, I mentioned asking my brother-in-law about just things to look for on these vehicles. He asked if we could get him the last 8 of the VIN numbers. This way, he can just do a complete actual search on that specific make and model. And then he can pull up any service specs, things of that nature that he can look at for service bulletins and things of that nature, which would be real helpful for us. And he'll be able to print them out for us.
For the Ford Explorers?
Yes. All right.
The next thing we wrote is the incoming calls. Since for October, it's 923 calls total, different types of calls. There's nothing that of significance for the month. We had no down power lines, bridge closures. If you look at the general assistance, there, you see that the numbers were pretty much the same. We made like 75 or 45 or a large amount was we made that month. Our calls pretty much constrained to 2020. We'll go next and we'll go to the detective report. For the month of October, the detective took in 26, we had 26 complaints for the month of October. 9 were assigned to the DB, 8 were cleared, and 1 is active. The remaining calls were, 5 of them were cleared by the patrol officers, and the remaining calls were cleared on scene without any further investigation. And the detectives have 6 active calls, which are calls waiting for further.
That's awesome. We have 6 inactive calls, which are calls that are waiting for responses from prosecutors or blood draws or further information so they can either move forward with the case or close it. Some of the cases of significance, we had domestic assault during the month where a woman who was trying to serve her own personal protection order on her ex-husband. There was a dispute, some assaultive threatening in a manner, which officers responded and took the report and submitted it to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, and they reviewed it, and then the recommendation for a warrant was denied. Let's move forward to a fraud one of interest. This is where a resident received a phone call from a person stating they're with the Amazon fraud claim department and asked the resident a whole bunch of questions, and that resident had given the person on the phone access to their laptop through remote access, and that the person on the other end representing Amazon fraud department took over their computer. So anybody that's watching this, Amazon's not going to call you, I don't believe, and ask for information to access your computer. So something to learn for everybody. And the last one of interest, we have more reports on this. These are just ones of interest. Was an OWI operating while intoxicated with child endangerment. One of the residents was at a location on the island. Other residents at the location had noticed an individual getting into a car intoxicated, called the police. Officers made a traffic stop, determined the driver to be intoxicated and with a minor in the car. And the operator refused all the sobriety tests, and the officers on the scene requested and got a blood search warrant, and they're waiting for results on that. So that goes back to the DB stating they have inactive cases. That's an example of one where they're waiting for further information to make it more active. So, any questions on the DB report? And this was submitted by Detective Eric Vasquez. I'm gonna kind of jump out of order here just because we're on the DB. We have the juvenile reports at the end of the packet. This was we received a call about a malicious destruction of property at the Playscape on Macomb Street. Some teenage kids were out there destroying things and had damaged some of the recreational equipment. Our detectives were able to use some surveillance equipment we had on scene to determine who the individual was, contacted the parents, and then the remedy is Director Kim O'Farrell is going to coordinate community service hours to remedy that situation. They'll be repaired.
So it's not going to any type of juvenile proceedings or anything? Okay. Good.
The monthly self-initiated, officer-initiated reports. It's not much different than we've had in other comparatives the other year in 2020. Only difference is you see where Lieutenant Pellin is 0 days worked. He's still off sick. Officer Canterbury worked 10 days because he came off of FMLA. An officer counts, worked 1 day, he's also off of medical. So, but besides that, our officers are still maintaining the roads and calls and service. You see it's kind of spread out in the mileage. Any specific questions about the self-initiated field activity report for the officers? The stats are pretty comparative to last year this time. This is kind of a, I don't know if you find this interesting, but the monthly crash report, I'm going to kind of go through 20, 21, 20, and 19. So for 21, you'll see that for the year we're at 19. That's through the 10 months. We're at 19 deer car crashes. You can see for the same time period we have 100 crashes total for the reported crashes on the island. Why I say that is if you go to 2020, you look at the same, you have to take away December and November, where we have 10 for the year in deer car crashes compared to 19 at this time last year. So the deer car crashes have gone down 9 since last year. But our accidents have gone up from 61 to 100 this year. So our car crashes have gone up by 39, but the deer car involvement has gone down by 9. Does that make sense? So we've had more car crashes, less involving deer. You can maybe attribute that to the deer call.
And these are actually moving crashes, right? This isn't like Kroger parking lot damage crashes.
It might be all of them, but most of our accidents are moving car crashes. We do have the Kroger, the high school is another one. We get some of these in there, but majority of these crashes are moving. So it shows that the deer car crashes have gone down. And the last thing I have is the training report for the month. So the state of Michigan has changed how they've done the sex offender registry. So the officer secretaries and the 4 dispatchers are now training to learn the new system. Officer secretaries is the one who's in charge of it for our department. So he's organized the trainings for the 4 dispatchers. So the first one they had this month was an online course, introduction to the new process for the training. If you go down to the 3rd training right there on October 20th, they had an online interactive course, which is teaching them how to use the new system, how to register the sex offenders, how to make the records complete the searches and generate documents. It's a new way the states is changing the way they do the sex offender registry. And then Officer Benson had his monthly SWAT training. He's had proficiency basically with the rifles and shotguns and different types of shooting scenarios to make sure they're on their skill level is still proficient. And then the last one is a little bit more of a greater accomplishment is Officer Carrico and our K9 Atlas. He did his normal monthly training exercises of obedience, evidence searching, apprehension, narcotics detection. But Officer Carrico's been practicing with the Atlas to get a certification through the government. It's not the government, through the USPCA. He went through a 4-day certification course where they went over narcotics detection, tracking, apprehension, agility, obedience to get an annual certification. Why this is important, it acknowledges that Atlas and Officer Carrico are working team together. That in this process has been recognized by the court systems for litigation liability. So that's an important thing to have with the dog on a yearly basis. So this is the first time Atlas is qualified for this with Officer Carrico, so it's an accomplishment. I know Officer Carrico put a lot of time into making sure he passed this. So are there any questions on the training report? No? Chief Harden? Oh, Wes? All right.
Before you leave, real quick, you mentioned that Kevin's off.
Yep.
Is anyone else off?
Officer, Lieutenant Pellin is.
Well,
That's it for right now.
okay, so
Oh, we have one more off that's on, sorry. Officer Secretaris is off on a 5-day COVID exposure.
Julie's back.
Julie's off too. She's off. She's coming back December 1st, is that where?
We're hoping the first week in December, but it may be into the second week.
Okay.
So we got 4 off right now.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you. Wes?
Good evening. A few things I have for you guys, starting off with the reserve report for October. Reserves worked 42 and a half hours for the month. The cadets had 0 hours. The events worked for the month was the homecoming parade, the homecoming game, the Halloween parade, and then Angels Night Patrol followed with Halloween night. For the month of October, there wasn't any training. We do have some training that's coming up for November, which will be addressed in November's report. One thing to mention is that recruit Sanat Atala did graduate from Schoolcraft Academy with the reserve certification. So I wanted to show you guys that. He will be starting this month, at the end of the month. So, Reserve Officer Atala will join our unit. One more picture of a few others that were there to support. Thank you, Chief, for coming out, supporting us as well. Appreciate it.
It's nice to see you.
That's pretty much all I have for the month right now. If you guys have any questions, that takes us up to 8 officers, which we're still obviously hiring and looking to add 3 more individuals.
So does that mean Officer Satala? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah, Atala.
One more time?
Atala.
Atala, thank you. So he's ready to go on the road then to help and assist with
Yes,
everything?
he will be starting his field training with me. I'll be his FTO officer. Thank you.
Good evening. So I'm going to continue with the monthly report. What I wanted to bring up first is that our clerk dispatcher position that we were filling temporarily, that individual resigned. It wasn't conducive with their family life and having a hard time working midnight shift and the swing shift. And so that individual position has become vacant again. We are soliciting applications for clerk dispatcher currently at the township. The expiration date is Monday, November 22nd. And if you go to the township website and then also go to the POIM website, you'll see solicitations that would indicate the parameters, what the job duties are, how to apply, and the amount that's being paid as a starting wage. So I just want to bring that to anybody's attention that's looking for a full-time employment. It offers wages and benefits. It offers medical, dental, and healthcare. So it's an entry-level position to work as one of our 911 dispatchers. If anybody's unfamiliar with, they watch Rescue 911 or all these different TV shows that kind of show what a 911 dispatcher does, you might want to just give us a call and talk to one of our dispatchers and ask what they do. It's kind of different. We don't have like a call center, which is like in Detroit, they have an operational call center where they have maybe 6 or 8 different dispatchers that are manning the phones all at once. We have a central dispatch, which is unique. Downriver is actually trying to work into a consortium to have a downriver police dispatch and fire dispatch. That's in the works, that they're trying to get communities online. But right now, we've worked autonomously because Crozille being an island and having 2 bridges and stuff, we don't really have the ability, if a bridge swings or 2 bridges swing, that we can bring help to us. So having a 911 dispatcher that's familiar with our layout, with the location of streets and landmarks and knowing the community, being a full-time position, they really know the intimacy of Crozille, which is really a benchmark that makes our dispatchers top-notch, is that they can get to certain locations because they know the area and they're familiar with it. So it's a big benefit. So it's a great job if somebody wants an entry-level position as a dispatcher. And like I said, you can call our 676-7100 and we'll be happy to answer any questions if somebody has any. Any questions on that? The next one is going to be our ACO. As Lieutenant Carmack just articulated, I'm hoping that the first week or second week in December that our ACO will be back in service. Once again, I'll reiterate from the previous meetings that we have Woodhaven, Trenton, Animal Control that's backing us up right now for the incidences that would require a professional. One would require somebody that's trained professionally in ACO or animal control work is for euthanasia or animal bites. We do have volunteers at the shelter, but there's certain situations that we don't want to put the volunteers in, and there's also a training level in education in handling certain types of aspects of that job. So it was on our onus to have a reciprocity with the outside community for this temporary situation that we have with Julie, and so that's going to be coming to a close soon. With that, in the immediate past, she had a annual inspection, which she did pass with the Michigan Department of Agriculture. Just one of the things, just so people know what they're looking for, she was gigged on just a cork board in the animal area. Absorbent materials, it could be even paper towels, can absorb disease and stuff that are airborne in that. So whenever they go and do their inspection, they're looking for key things that may be of a problem. So, we're going to remediate the cork board and probably put a whiteboard up so that, we can eliminate one of these transmission vectors, if you will. So those are things that take place whenever an annual inspection happens. There was a couple of our other items, but they're all correctable with no infractions, so we'll be taking corrective action on those. The next thing is our budget is coming up, and what I've done is preface to try and get Lieutenant Carmack and Sergeant Brozek prepared for the budget, which will begin in January. So if they still hold those roles, or if they're promoted or whatever may happen in the transition, it's going to be important that the groundwork's set up for the budget. So I'm going to provide them with some background materials. Julie's came to me over the years with wish lists. Right now, just one thing that's standing out the most is that the animal shelter is going to be requiring a refurbishment of the roof tiles on the building. So I don't know how many layers are. Nobody's been able to really give me a valid idea, but it's going to be a worthwhile capital improvement project that we're going to have to put new shingles on to the animal control building. Right now, we've solicited, as of in the fall, we had proposals anywhere from 15 to 20,000. So that's going to be one of the capital outlay improvements that is kind of going to be a necessity down the road in the immediate future. So with that, outside of our budget that we have that's provided by the township, of course, everybody should have been aware that watches the previous meetings that we have a donation that came from a generous former Grosseal resident. And once that property is sold, that should bring in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars back to the animal control office. And so those funds would go towards that improvement. We also have other funds that she's been generating through pop bottle distribution to where people are dropping off their pop bottles and using those as donations. And then donations that are either cash or in check form, just as a generosity, as a donation. And so I don't know what the current number is, but it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. So she's self-generating funds to be able to keep things operational, and she's doing a really fine job. Does anybody have any questions on that?
On the roof,
Yes.
this might. Volunteers to do the roof if the township just pays for materials?
I'm sure that would be a possibility. It's going to have to be on Julie to do the more research and facilitate how she wants to do that. I know with her donations and stuff, we've done that, where people have donated their time to do improvements and stuff. So I wouldn't think that would be out of the realm of the ordinary either.
Square feet's that building?
I couldn't answer that. I'm not sure off the top of my head. The one problem that we do have with that structure is that there's a studio apartment in the backside, which is rented out. So I can't see that we're going to stop at that point it's the township's building from my understanding, so.
Residential,
It's a residential, yes, yeah. It's been rented out for decades, just in the back. But I know we would be incurring the cost for that, but. So that's with the ACO report. Anybody have any questions on the ACO? All right. Next thing I want to do is jump into the budget report, I believe. Let me pull, yes. So. Okay, a couple of things on the budget. The first one is part-time salaries, 301708. The part-time salaries, that was what we were taking our line item from for the payment of the dispatcher that was hired temporarily that just resigned. So just out of our budget, we do put in for a part-time position. If they would have maintained their employment, we were only permitted for a 90-day window to have a temporary dispatcher for that period of
what
time.
line item was that?
The second one, 301708. So that was one of them that we were exhausting first before we would go into other line items. The first one, 301706, the salary is full-time. So as you can see, it's at 66.72%. Just understand that all of our recent retirements, we have to take our cash that goes on to their severance pay out of a certain line item. So that's where that's coming from. So we had 2 dispatchers and a severance for a sergeant that was separated, and anybody else? Am I missing anybody else? Three so far? Oh, and Ruth, our administrative secretary right now. And then, and who? Yeah, and Marcia. I put as 2 dispatchers, Marcia and Michelle. So those are going to show a little bit of an increase, and we have to draw the money out of the account somewhere. Eventually, anything that's not covered would come out of the fund balance or the general fund. And the next one is salaries overtime. And as you can see, we're peaking out at our overtime budget right now. Several factors are contributing to this. As everybody knows, should know by now, COVID impacted 7 of our department staff. Right now, we currently have an officer on medical leave that's going to be into a 6-week window due to some personal illness. We have 1 officer that's on COVID right now for an additional 5 administrative days. And then we have the lieutenant that's on a long-term medical right now. Some vacation has been, introduced into this. Our people have been working a lot of overtime. And due to the staffing conditions that we have right now, our overtime has increased. But just understand that some of this is being supplanted now that we have a sergeant that hasn't been replaced and refilled yet, and we have a clerk dispatcher right now whose position is vacant at this point. So, we have 2 positions that aren't filled. Let's just say until we fill those positions, we're still operating within 2 budgets that were there for their employment. Mr. Longton, did you have some questions?
Yes, sir. I was going to ask, with the we don't have an actual sergeant position available yet, do we? Because Sergeant Carmack is acting as lieutenant at this point,
Right.
right? So
What?
moving forward, I just want to know what your thoughts are
Yes.
of.
I have a detailed presentation that's going to address some dynamics that are going in with the department, and it would answer that question. I can answer it now, or if you can
No,
just pause, and I will answer that tonight.
Thank you.
All right. So the rest of the budget, there's nothing surmountable that we're, considering that is of alarm to us. Even with the increases in, if you go to your gas pumps, the gas is increasing and stuff. We're still within our confines for our gasoline budget. If you look at just the miscellaneous expenses, I don't want to use the word stingy, but we're just being very cost conscious right now on every expenditure that we're doing to try and minimize any expenses to try and bring the balance of the budget in line this year. Just as I explained last year, is that the operational budget, I believe, will be close in a pretty good shape for the end of the year whenever all of this averages out. However, there are the retirements that aren't on the books that the money has to come from somewhere, and that's never a budgeted item annually. So, that's going to end up showing a cost overrun for the annual budget, just for those expenditures.
Does that hit?
Well, the payoffs should be under 301,706, so it'll come out of the regular salaries, because it has to come out of somewhere on the budget. So, and then, you know, as they look at our budget in totality at the end of the year, they're going to look at what the overages were, and then it should show that the retirements were that overage. Any other questions on that? Second page of it. Back to the microphone. So the second page of that is just showing our animal control proceeds that are allotted for the ACO within her allotted budget. Right now we're at 50% for her. And then the last item, it's under Office of Civil Defense, Department 426. That's the reserves budget, and we still are at the 100%. What did happen is that with Mr. Atala, which we just brought up, he ended up going to the academy, so that used a majority of the expenses for that. And then some other miscellaneous purchases that we did. I don't really foresee, unless you do, Lieutenant, do you see any other purchases that we'll have out of the reserve budget for this year?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So we're kind of where we need to be, but we don't anticipate any other expenditures out of that account. So. Reluctantly, I show you this, but this is a cost comparison of the overtime from 2020 to 2021. It's showing an increase in the overtime, but the numbers are true and valid. We've been impacted by a lot of different things that were very dynamic. And then, like I said, with the vacancies that we have right now, we haven't backfilled for those vacancies, but, you know, those monies were budgeted and we're still working within those confines. The next topic is the confidential secretary hiring update. And all I will say is I participated yesterday evening with the police commission, and they did a review of a group of candidates. And right now we're just waiting for the recommendation that they propose, and we'll go from there. So Ms. Kalidas' last day was yesterday, so we're in a transition phase on a lot of fronts, which I'm going to show you in a presentation that I'm going to do shortly. But with that, it was sad to see her go. She's been a fixture with the police department for decades, and she's done a phenomenal job. It's going to take somebody of great talent to fill her shoes, and we're expeditiously moving to get her replacement online very quickly. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions or want to add to that?
I was just going to add that we did hold a special session last night. It was an open meeting. Unfortunately, nobody else showed up except for the candidates that we held the interviews for. We did take a vote yesterday, and we have made that decision, which will go to the township board now for approval, and also pending a background check as well. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Right now, the decision is pending the background check.
Yes.
So up until now, does anybody have any questions on the generality of the agenda for so far, for the monthly report?
No.
So now I'm going to go into the police hire update. So my presentation that I have is, to say, very convoluted, to say the least, because I want to present to you all the different dynamics that the police department is dealing with on so many fronts right now. And I think I've managed to put it into a flow chart that'll make it easily digestible. So I'll do my best to explain it to you. So is that visible on your, that's about as best I can do, but I'm hoping you can read it.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a flow chart of the department, and I'm going to actually show you. I'm gonna bounce around here just for a minute.
And you'll forward a copy of all this by email to us?
I can. Yes, sir. Just looking for a specific one. Okay. So right now, this is the current situation that we have going on right now, okay? So starting at the top, myself, we have administrative secretary position that's vacant with the interview process has just been completed. We have the lieutenant position right now filled in by Sergeant Carmack, who was promoted to an interim lieutenant. I don't have Lieutenant Pellin on here just because of the fact of the flow chart, but just understand he is still in that position, all right? And then we have the animal control, so they all answer to the chief of police. We have the detective bureau that is in line over here, and the detective bureau has 2 officers that are dedicated to that position. And then we have a records clerk, which is currently vacant right now. So the objective is to get the additional dispatcher online, which will serve a dual function and be a dispatcher and a records clerk. On the afternoon shift, Sergeant McLaughlin's vacancy has not been filled, and so we have 3 patrolmen that are on that shift, and we have Sergeant Brozick, who is now technically working as a road sergeant, if you will. So he's kind of bouncing between administration and the road, because right now, upon my departure, he's going to move up a slot. So he's kind of just balancing the day shift right now. And then on midnights, Sergeant Carmack is now the acting lieutenant, so midnights has a vacancy right now in that regard.
What's the afternoon vacancy, Sergeant? Go back to the left.
The afternoon, Sergeant McLaughlin,
Yeah.
Danny McLaughlin. So that gives you an overview of where we're at. The 2 factors that aren't on this chart is Lieutenant Pellin, and his position is holding here. And then another one is our task force officer that's assigned to DEA, okay? So just to give you a whole totality of the overview. All right. So let me get to the next one. Okay, now, upon my departure, we will have a vacancy in the chief of police position. We will have a vacancy that's soon to be filled with the secretary's position. We have Mr. King here, which is an officer that was just approved at the last township board meeting for hire. So he is going to be assigned actually and placed on a shift, and we would hope within a month of training that he would be assigned to a shift. So once he gets assigned to a shift, he will absorb a position so that, you know, we're bringing our capacity back up. So if we use this as a template right now, Mr. King would replace Sergeant McLaughlin for argumentative purposes right now. And
For
then,
head count purposes, you mean?
what's that?
For head count purposes,
Yes,
not rank.
correct. And then one of the highest ranking patrolmen right now would be promoted to sergeant. Okay? So that's what would transpire with those conditions.
That position is filled by seniority,
Yes.
and the next guy up would be,
Detective Vasquez. Yeah. It would actually go to Officer Ferguson,
understand that.
but he declined to make that promotion. So Detective Vasquez would be the next in line. So let me get to a couple of last points. Just trying to get you the right one so we can move forward. All right, now, upon my departure, this is what's gonna happen, is that Lieutenant Carmack is gonna be the acting chief, or interim chief, however you wanna title him. They somewhat go one hand or the other, it's the same terminology. The interview should be done, and we should have online the administrative secretary coming on board. Sergeant Brozick is gonna pretty much well be functioning as the lieutenant, or acting lieutenant at this point. I would hope that by the first or second week that ACO Cordis is back. Our records clerk would still be vacant at this point in time. And as I said, Mr. King will be in training, and he's going to be training with Sergeant Carmack and/or Officer Carrico. So he'll be assigned to the day shifters during his training period. And then once that period is done, then he'll be assigned to a shift. Okay? So that's what's going on with those dynamics as of, I mean, I'll put a date on this as December 3rd, December 4th, whenever I leave. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Now, here's where it gets dicey, and I'm going to try and keep you on point. So what we're looking at is, with the township and with the police commission, is whether or not, with what's transpired, if there will be a vacancy for internal or external applicants, okay? So in this flow chart, it shows that if we have an external promotion from the outside, here's what happens. I leave, but then somebody else from the outside becomes chief, and it's a wash, okay? So that's what would transpire with that situation. You still have Mr. King here coming on board, but that's what would transpire with that, just currently right now with the setup that we have. If we do a internal promotion, what's going to happen is somebody within the ranks is going to be promoted up to chief, and then it's going to leave a vacancy within our ranks to be filled. All right? And, you know, what is the next thing that I'll be asking for in the action item is that I would like to ask the police commission that I would just like to have a layered backup, that if a vacancy presents itself, that we can have the approval of the police commission to ask for the next person in line after Mr. King to be promoted or employed with the Crozio Police Department if the vacancy presents itself. So that's what I'm after. And so whenever all of this, whenever all of this dynamics of things happen and change, that it won't be a time delay because of the weeks and months that go from meeting to meeting, and the police commission's meeting may be happening before or after a township board meeting. So all I would be asking is that for approval, that we have a backup, that whenever a position presents itself, that we can go to the next candidate online. All right. The last thing, and this one, I would be remiss if I didn't bring these points up, okay? So the lieutenant will be up for retirement soon, and at his pleasure, if he wants to stay, that's fine, or if he wants to leave, that's fine. I just want it to be known to everyone, though, that perhaps on his choices, if he makes a retirement, there's going to be a position that's vacant there, and I want us to all be prepared for that. And so if he chooses to retire, his position would need to be backfilled with an employable person. And so we need to have a succession of having the proper people lined up to be able to fill any of these positions, should they happen. It's a safety measure. So I can't speak for the lieutenant, and if he chooses to come back and he continues to work in the department, then we don't have.
Still somewhat of an unknown.
It is.
It's very heartening that all the word that we're getting is that he is finally improving.
Yes.
But I know that it's nowhere near being something that we can put a timeline on at this point.
Correct. You know, I can speak from experience. I had a dispatcher, and for over 5 years, she had stated, well, I may retire this year, and it just went on, you know, for 5 years. And so, right. You know, and Ken can make his decisions whenever he's comfortable to make those decisions and whenever he feels good.
Did.
Yep. And so, but I just don't want anybody to be blindsided, and I want everybody to have a totality of the circumstances that we may be presented with as a police department. So.
Now, there's nothing stopping us, though. And I think, well, are you finished? No, I don't want to interrupt your presentation before.
Let me just say this. Was I able to express the totality of circumstances to you to where you can understand it? And if so, do you have any questions if I did not?
No, I'd like to say this is something that needs to be done, has needed to be done, and with all the other gibberish going on, we haven't got to it yet, and thank you for doing that. That's why I'd like to get those files. Some of the ways we've done this in the past in the industrial world, I know, and so we have to look at ways to make the budget. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stands out is if we didn't fill the records clerk, could make an opening available for the next up list immediately. I mean, I'm not sure that's anything we want to entertain yet. I haven't talked to you guys yet. But there are ways to work within this budget. And I think we need to have a study session when the hunters get back and when Jeff's available. Because right now I'm not sure that we're all up to speed with what's going on. And I know Mike Jarecki's been doing some things. So we need to get aligned. And this is a good working document to start with. So I appreciate the time and effort that went into it in the presentation.
So that's the situation where we're at right now. Just understand that April 1st is the new budget comes online. So we're working within a window that all of these changes are happening within that stopgap of time. So, you know, we're working within a 5-month window. So any changes, adjustments, or anything that need to be in play, there's plenty of time to do that. And, you know, once everybody gets seated and whenever you make the decision of where everybody's going to be, then you'll be in a better place. All right.
Yeah, no, thanks for putting that together. It's critical. Everyone recognizes, right? I mean, we're short-staffed to start with, right? And on top of that, we've got people out for COVID and other, you know,
Yes, yes.
other illnesses, and now we've got a couple other potential, you know, people moving. So yeah, we need to move quickly and make sure that we're covered.
So with the proposal for the transition, like I said, Mr. King is online. I'm just asking the police commission if you would rubber stamp just some language that myself and Mr. Longton have made a proposal for, is just so that we can keep a flow and continuity of keeping things happening. I know the guys are doing a phenomenal job between Lieutenant Carmack and Sergeant Brozick. I just want that I'm presenting them with a lot of information, and I'm trying to get everything lined up for them so that it can just, you know, be the next step that they do and things flow smoothly. And so we've been working together, and I think that in working together, we've been able to kind of come up with a concept to keep things moving strategically and appropriately for what's being dealt right now. So.
No, and I think we've got the right guys that we've put in place in Doug and Todd.
They're doing a great job, yes. Questions?
Eric? Scott? Thank you very much, Brent.
Okay.
So moving on to the action item.
Well, the liaison report obviously is, you know, Mike's not here, he's deer hunting. I think we've covered everything so far on the monthly reports. Can I have a motion to accept the monthly reports in plural?
Motion?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So let's move to the action item, and I think, you know, we had a discussion prior to this. Brent, you and Scott have got the language worked out.
Yes, so
Why don't you read the motion that we're proposing?
So I move to approve to forward on to the township board for approval to hire the next candidate on the police department's eligibility list upon a vacancy within the police department ranks.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Does that meet with your wishes?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving along. Public comments. We've got a, well, and the gentleman to the right? Okay, he's been here before. I should know by now, but Kathy, you're always first on our list.
Kathy Walker, 26051 Thorpe Court. I just wanted to say two things tonight. First of all, I love Lieutenant Carmack. That's the best visuals I've seen. I can't tell you how many times when I go to the board meetings and I can't read the stuff. It was nice and big and clear. It was great. That was the best visuals I've seen at any meeting. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and please keep doing that. And secondly, I'm glad to see that you're having an in-person meeting. I wish the township board would take your lead and follow along, because this is great.
We've had an in-person meeting since March, April, whatever.
Yes, you have. And
In fact, you know,
it would be nice to see the township board follow your lead.
should be talking to your township board
I have been.
representatives.
I have been. But anyways, I wanted to thank you, and that was just great. I really liked that you could see it. I hate when Ann will put up things and you can't read it. This is just great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You need my name and address, Paul?
Well, that is protocol, sir.
Is it? Bob Z. Blauvelt. First of all, I've done this before, but since this is Mr. Harden's last meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank him for his 25 years of service. And I've had an opportunity to work with Brent. He is a caring, persistent, complete individual, and he's done an outstanding job. Thank you very much. He also provided us with a manifest of information here that was just fantastic. He gave you, I believe, 5 scenarios of what you have to work with. He laid it out. Basically, he's given us a plan to follow up in keeping the manpower in place. It took a lot of time, a lot of hours, and it was right on. It was a very nice job. Also, I would like to compliment Mr. Carmack, Sergeant Brozak, our reserve team, Wes. These people have stepped up and done an outstanding job. This is not an opinion. This is a fact, a proven fact of the talent that we have within our own department and how important it is to promote from within. 2 reasons. Number 1, reward our people for an outstanding job, encourage them to continue, and to support them. Number 2, to reward ourselves for acknowledging and recognizing that we have this talent within our own department and we're able to utilize it. With that said, fine job tonight. I promote the hiring of that officer. Mr. Harden's charts have shown how it is so important to maintain 12 road patrol so that we can keep 9 on the road. And hopefully our board will recognize the requests of the residents, the actions of the commissions, and honor us with a live meeting on the 13th. And hopefully we can witness approval of your action item in the confines of this very room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Doug, Todd, Wes, you got anything you want to say? Scott? No. Eric?
Nope.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming, everyone.